Hello and welcome to a video about using flashcards to learn openings. Right, okay. So first of all, I'd like to explain this new way of, or to me, it's a new way of learning chess openings. Um, I feel that by using flashcards, it's better than chessable because you have to work out how to get to the next stage. Now, I'll show you how I do that. Okay, so basically, I just try to pick very critical positions in the opening or that part of the line, and then I try to get to the next stage after 2 or 3 moves and try to use logic to help me to do that. Okay. And I feel that you have to use reasoning and work ethic rather than just relying on your memory to memorize opening lines. I like this method of flashcards or using notes because that's how I studied at university. Rather than reading all the chapters again and again, I would just have just simple notes like most people do. Uh, and just use that for life. Okay, that's one way to memorize things. Um, because the memory lifespan tends to decline after a short period of time, to keep the information and the knowledge learned, you've got to constantly go over them. And by using the Feynman's technique, occasionally just looking at the moves, the ideas, the positions on the board, that way the positions and the line will stick in your memory for longer. Okay. Also, if you don't feel like going through 8 books in one evening, or flicking through all the pages constantly, I feel that by just trying to memorize some of the visual positions, it's almost like a visual cue for you to use your memory to sorry, your reasoning to get to the next stage, and that will help you memorize those moves a lot better. And also, instead of lugging opening books in your bag to work, to school, to college, what have you, or even to your next tournament, you can just have those positions on your phone, and that way you don't have to go through all the opening books. So this is what I mean. So let's go to the actual flashcards. Okay, so these aren't flashcards, it's just on my Word document, and I've photo captured what I needed to capture. Now, first of all, okay, so here I have a section on the King's Gambit, okay, under the headings, right? And then you've got the references. So H4, that is one line. And then you've got all the sub variations, okay, and then the next part would be 2.1, which is knight f3, and then you've got castle in there, okay. This will be made clear later, or knight f3 and then d4 rather than knight f3 and bishop c4 immediately. Okay, so I've got some of these ideas. Okay, these are some of the kind of the main lines, as it were. Anyway, okay, all will be revealed. So here, under this section here, okay, so let's just head to it very quickly. Bishop f4. Okay, so what do I mean? Okay, so let's say under the knight f3 line, okay, in the King's Gambit, I tend to play the King's Gambit accepted. Okay, so after he plays knight f3, you play knight g5. And then if he plays the bishop c4 line, as you can see here, bishop c4, I've got to try to memorize the next few moves. Only 2 or 3 moves or something like that, if it's not too obvious. And then that way I can get to that stage and then move on to the next stage after that. Okay, so here, okay, so when I get this position, my opponent plays bishop c4, I've got to think about how to get to the next picture here. Okay, so I must think, okay, is pawn to g4, good, okay. Pawn to g4, the knight moves out the way, okay, maybe to e5, and then queen h5, checking the king. The king can go to f1, pawn can block on g3, or king e2, okay. So this looks about right, yep. So we look at the contents page, okay, so g3, king f1, king e2, etc., etc., okay. So under this section, okay, so after g4, let's say the knight goes to e5, queen h5 check, king goes to f1. Right, okay, so let's see what the next picture is. Excellent. Okay, so I managed to memorize that. Okay, so here, under the subheadings, we got G3. Don't worry about the references; they're not perfect, not very nice. Actually, I did a bad job of that. Actually, I should have followed some of the books by probably Gambit or Cadogan or any other brand. Okay, that does a good job in referencing these openings. Okay, so after G3, I would say pawn to G3. Pawn takes, okay, and I think the next stage, gosh, would it be something like, not pawn takes because the queen would take the rook there, okay, so after g3, pawn takes g3, okay, maybe possibly that's in the way, okay, so maybe bishop takes f7, or even maybe castle. Castle wouldn't be good. Castle wouldn't be good because queen h2 would be checkmate. So maybe the king would have to hide on the f1 square. I can't quite remember. Okay, but anyway, so let's move on. What is the next stage? So we place g3. So g3, what do I do here? Pawn takes. Okay, pawn takes. So it looks like if queen takes g4, the queen will be attacked because after pawn takes h2, queen takes queen. Okay, so that can't be right. So g3, f takes g3, queen takes g4. I would probably play g2 check. G2 check, queen takes queen, but I take the rook with check and it queens. Okay, so that looks like a good idea. Right, so let's move on to the next stage. Okay, so he does take. Okay, queen doesn't take this. Okay, but the bishop does instead. So bishop makes a quick check, okay, and then king into e7. Now, why king into e7? You can add in your notes. I can basically remember. If after king d8, bishop, let's say, moves away, there's a knight f7 check on the king on d8 and rook on h8. Okay, so that's why the king, to avoid that, the king goes to e7. Okay, so anyway, so here I would say the next stage would be queen takes g4, pawn to g2, queen takes queen, check. Okay, so that can't be right. Okay, so if queen takes queen, queen takes queen, queen takes pawn, queen takes queen. Okay, knight takes queen, and king takes here. Surely that can't be that great. Surely that's not the best move. I wonder whether it's yeah, king can't castle. Okay, so I would probably say it's queen takes queen, queen takes queen, knight takes queen, and then king takes knight. That doesn't quite look right. I haven't studied this in a while. Anyway. Oh, okay. Basically, that's the end. That's the end there. Okay, so black is winning in this line. Okay, so that's probably what it is. Okay, right. Anyway, so the next variation or sub-variation is king f1, okay? So let's go back to this. So after the queen goes to h4, check, king goes to f1, okay? Now, I've got to try to use logic here, okay? So, right, so the pawn on g4 is attacked, okay? Right, so knight knight to f7, knight to f7, winning the rook. Okay. Now, so you could be looking at pawn to d5, stopping the knight from taking f7. Okay. d5, bishop takes d5, and we still have this threat. Okay. So it still doesn't look quite right. Okay. But from my memory, it's actually the strange move knight c6. Now, it's very odd, this one. Okay, this is one of the exceptions. I didn't write that down in notes. You can do that yourself. Okay, so it's knight c6. Why? You're losing a rook, aren't you? Knight takes f7. Okay, knight takes f7. I would play bishop c5. Okay, threatening queen f2 check. Okay, so queen could probably go to e2 or e1. Okay, how else do I keep the threats going? Queen, something like queen h5. Oh no, I would play g3. Queen e1, g3. Okay, and then after g3, maybe h3, and then maybe pawn to f3, attacking this. Yeah, basically bishop f2. Basically, I have this attack here. Okay, with bishop c5. Anyway, so it's knight c6. If bishop takes f7, I would play king e7, not king d8, because the knight can go to f7 at a later point and then fork the king and the rook. Okay, so if the bishop takes, I would play king f7. But if after knight c6, okay, more than likely, white is going to play knight takes f7. And if he does, bishop c5, queen here, queen e2, g3, just to keep the queens on the board. Knight takes f8. Okay, so I'm losing a rook, but I do have an attack. I would actually play knight f6. Knight f6. Maybe looking to play d5 and then getting my pieces out. And that way, is it worth it? It could be. Okay, it could be. I think that's a viable option. Okay, so we go to the next stage. Look, knight c6. That's how I got to this point. So knight c6. So he's got like a few lines here. What does he play? He plays bishop takes. Bishop takes f7, king to e7, and already I think I'm winning. Okay, so if the knight takes c6, d takes c6, bishop c4, I've basically opened up the position for my pieces to attack. Okay, and here the reason being knight to king to d8, king to d8, knight takes knight first, pawn takes. Okay, I think that's is that okay? I'm not quite sure, but let's say bishop here. Yeah, that doesn't work. Okay, no, knight takes, bishop moves back. Okay, but here if the knight took on f7, this is the line. Okay, so here I should have added in knight takes f7, knight takes f7. Okay, I'm sure this is the next subline. Okay, right. No, that didn't happen. Okay, because that's not the best line. Okay, if knight takes f7, then bishop c5, knight takes f8. Okay, queen e2 to stop the queen from checkmating on f2, g3. Okay, and then I've got this huge attack. Knight takes f8. Yeah, knight f6. Yeah, I've got lots of pieces in play, whereas the white king is stranded with all his pieces on the queen side, undeveloped. The pawn is still on d2, so this bishop is not being developed. It's really worth giving this a shout. Okay, so the best line is actually queen takes g4, and then I can't move the queen back because knight takes f7 will win the rook for no reason. Okay, so after queen takes g4, queen takes g4, knight takes g4. Pawn to d5. The bishop on c8 is attacking the knight, as well as the pawn attacking the bishop on c4. So after pawn takes d5, bishop takes the knight on g4, pawn takes knight. Actually, that might not be the best move. Okay, so after knight takes g4, d5, pawn takes d5, I would actually play knight to d4, heading to c2, winning that rook there. And the bishop is attacking this knight here. Okay, so that's what I would play. Right, here we go. So that must be the best line. Okay, queen takes g4, queen takes g4, knight takes g4. Okay, so what is the next move? It's quite explanatory. It's d5. Is it? Attacking the knight as well as the bishop. Okay, and then after the pawn takes on d5, because it's got to attack the knight due to the simultaneous attack on the knight here on g4. Okay, so d5, pawn takes d5, knight to d4. And as I explained, the knight wants to capture that pawn on c2, which then captures the rook on a1. Okay, right. Am I right? There we go. That is the next phase. d5, pawn takes d5, knight d4, ignoring the capture on g4 first. Okay, right. Then what's the next stage? I can't quite remember. Okay, so, you've got to assess this position. Bishop to g7, okay, to protect this knight. Okay, so that's how you can use the flashcard method to memorize your openings. So let me show you a real life example. Okay, so in this particular game, my opponent here played the King's Gambit. Okay, now, like I said, I'm learning the King's Gambit accepted. So I take knight f3. I remember after knight f3, I tried to chase it with g5. And he plays the bishop c4 line. Okay, so what happens is I just remember the queen checking the king on h4. How do I achieve that? By chasing the knight away first. Then he goes to e5. My pawn on g4 is attacked. Queen here. The pawn to g3 line, g3, pawn takes pawn, looking to uncover an attack here on the king. Right. Okay, king f1. Okay, so I've got to remember here that I've got to play not bishop c5, but the unusual move, knight c6. Okay, so here, let's use the analysis. Add bits of that. Okay, right. So what does it say? Okay, so here, if it takes on f7, right, bishop c5. Bishop c5. There's a checkmate here, king here, queen to e1. Do I play g3? g3, yes, I still remember it. It's the best move. Okay, the knight takes h8. I am a whole rook down here. Okay, but I've got some attack here. Is it worth it? Possibly. Okay, so knight f6, knight g4, or should I play d6? Not too sure. What does the engine say? Knight f6. Yes, this has all been explained. So after e5, knight g4. Okay, so he plays d4. Okay, blocking the bishop. So I've got to keep the line open. Knight takes. Here, threatening knight c2, forking the queen and the rook. Excellent. There we go. Is this a good idea? No, definitely not. Okay, I would play. Oh, there's a better move, but I think I would have played this anyway. Ugh. Oh gosh, is that not good? Anyway, I have to try to remember that then. Okay, so knight here. Okay, and then knight d2. Okay. Bishop g4. Keep the attack going. I would actually play d5. Yes, I would play something like d6. Not d5 because pawn takes d5 with a check. It just doesn't look right. I would actually play d6. Oh gosh, I'm actually losing there. Anyway, a very complicated position. Okay, very complicated. Okay, but anyway, so the best move is knight g4. Why is that? Okay, so knight g4. I'll have to try to remember that. Knight h2 checking the king. Aha. All right. Okay. So let's say, yeah, bishop f7. Then I would, yeah, king f8. Yep, that's logical. Okay, knight b3. Knight b3. I wouldn't play b6. Yep, knight takes. He takes, and then knight takes h2 looks reasonable. It's not there. Ooh. Ah, right. Okay, so g2 afterwards. f3. Gosh, sacrificing another pawn. Okay. Once again, I don't quite remember seeing this line, so it's nice to refresh my memory. Okay, right. So anyway, so that's the line that I've been learning using the flashcards. So knight c6, critical point. Okay, so white here must have smelt a fish. Okay, so he does play the best move. Okay, queen takes, knight takes. Okay, so in this position, I remember d5. So I played it. Takes the pawn. Knight d4. I remembered that much. Now he plays the knight to e5. Okay, can't remember what the reason was. Okay, or well, my opponent didn't explain or anything. Okay, so possibly there's an attack with, let's say, d6, and the pawn on f7 is vulnerable. Okay, but I've got knight takes c2. Okay, I just wonder whether I want to prevent d6 first of all. Okay, so after bishop, let's say bishop d6, knight moves away, and then I've got the pawn on c2. Excellent. So what did I play? Oh, I went straight for it. Okay, so even if he did play c6, d6, I would still play bishop e6 anyway, but it's not much of a threat according to the engine. Okay, so knight c2, he plays king d2, king e2. So I don't need to take the rook in the corner just yet. I could do something else. I could develop whilst blocking that pawn from getting to d6. Then what happened? d4, trying to open up the pathway for the bishop on c1, as well as attacking my pawn on f4. Okay. So what did I decide to do here? Oh, it's unusual. Instead of taking the rook in the corner, quick check. The knight on e5 is on pre. Right, there we go. Then I had to calculate that I could play f6 here. Ah, no. Ah, bishop f5, check with tempo. King moves back. Now f6. Okay, so here I am completely winning. My opponent was busted a long time ago. Knight c3. Okay. Actually, let's fork the two rooks. Okay, completely winning. Okay, etc., etc. Right. So basically, I won this game through pure opening preparation. I was winning as early as, gosh, knight e5, move 10. Okay, because he probably didn't know what he was doing. He probably remembered up to this point. Okay, pawn takes d5, and that was it, and lost his way afterwards. Okay, what was the best computer move? Oh, it is knight e5. It is knight e5. Okay, right. Or c3. Yeah, I thought c3 was the better move, but anyway, the evaluation jigs up and down. So he played the best move anyway. I didn't play the best move. I played this move. The best move is actually b3 here, but he's still completely losing. Okay, so basically, purely from opening preparation, I was winning by move 9. Oh, by move 10. Okay, and I won purely by using logic, memory, and the flashcard method. Okay, and hopefully you can too. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Hopefully you found it useful. Maybe if you don't like learning openings, or you don't learn it very well, you have to constantly refer back to the book and constantly practice. Maybe this is an alternative method for you. See if it works. It it's worked for me so far, and I'm going to stick with it. Hopefully, I'll be able to memorize even more lines and more openings using this method, and hopefully you and other people can too. Okay. Everyone has their own system, their own method. Okay, but everyone forgets their lines. They know the right ideas. That's fine, but the exact move order, yeah, it's difficult to memorize sometimes, especially if you're a Sicilian player. Memorizing 5 different sub variations up to the point of move 26. Okay, I think this is one way to help you, rather than constantly using a book all the time. Okay, thank you very much. Have a good time. Have a nice day, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye bye.